Hello, beautiful. And what I really want to know is what is good in your life today? This is Kia with another episode of the Female Veterans Podcast. And I have a very, very special episode for you today. As you know, I am a huge supporter of alternative therapies because I really believe in them. I believe that there is new science out there that exists for us that can help us, that can save lives of our loved ones and of us. And we're suffering with a lot of things. If you are like me, a disabled veteran, you deal with health issues on a daily basis. And it can be demoralizing and depressing and just make life a million times more difficult than it is for everybody else. So with doing these kinds of shows, the shows that I do about medical marijuana, about microdosing, and this one, which is going to be about ketamine infusion therapy, these episodes are meant to give you more awareness about alternatives that are out there that exist for you to provide you with relief. So I'm really excited for this episode today. You may remember in season 1, if you've been with me from the beginning, almost 3 years now, that I did an episode with my girl KJ, a brilliant artist. It was a 2-part episode. I think it's episode maybe 4 and 5 of the very first season of the Female Veterans Podcast. And she talked about the benefit of ketamine in her life and how it impacted her. And I will never forget that she said after going through her first ketamine infusion therapy treatment, she felt hope for the first time in her life. She'd never experienced the sensation, the feeling of hope. And it was the first time. And it just moved me to tears because I couldn't even fathom how painful her life must have been to that point and how much relief ketamine had given her. So today I have with me Sonia. She is a CRNA and she is the co-founder and CEO of the Ketamine Clinic of South Florida. And we are going to dive deep into how ketamine can help you and what you need to know in order to arm yourself with the knowledge to make an educated decision as to whether you want to try it or not. And I recommend trying everything you possibly can if it comes between life and death, because we know as veterans, it's not just 22 a day. So if you are out there, reach out for some support. We're all out here for you if you're in that dark place. And please, if you or someone you know and love is there, please consider alternative therapies as a way to relieve your suffering. And with that, I want to welcome Sonia to the Female Veterans Podcast. So welcome.
Thank you so much. What an honor to be invited to speak with you. And I am honored to provide education to you women that I am just so honored and so thankful for all your service. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. The pleasure is all mine. Really, I want to get right into this because I want to give everybody a little bit of background about you and why you chose healthcare as a profession for yourself.
Yes, I am definitely a very empathetic and private individual, but I love helping others, and it just gives me energy and gives me joy in my life. I feel complete when I'm helping others and getting into nursing. I mean, I had so many different careers, but when I found nursing, I knew that was where I belonged. And when I found anesthesia, I was just in heaven just to be in that space, helping people when they're at their most vulnerable and carrying them, whether through traumas or any, just the simplest of surgeries to the most traumatic of surgeries, just to be that person for them, to like have them going into surgery, just being completely comfortable and just feeling safe being in my hands. I knew that was like, I loved it. And I just felt fulfilled every day. And I had been using ketamine since I started in 2014, like with all my patients. And it wasn't until 2019 that I had gone to an anesthesia conference and found out that in low doses, there's people opening ketamine clinics to help treat mental health. And I have a long history in my family, some close family members that I grew up with that struggled heavily, and it was just hopeless, just in and out of hospitals, different medications. There was just struggle after struggle, and it was just hopeless in that. And just being there, knowing how helpless they were, and I couldn't do anything about it. And when I learned about what I could possibly provide, not only for my family but for everyone struggling, I just knew that there was no other path. So then my business partner and I, we actually both CRNAs opened the clinic in 2020.
Okay, so the clinic itself has been open for 2 years, but you started,
Mhm.
you said, using ketamine in the beginning of your career. How long have you been a nurse?
Well, I started nursing in 2009, working in a pediatric ICU, then going into open heart surgery, recovering patients from open heart. And then it wasn't until 2014 that I started and went into anesthesia school. And that right from the very beginning, I started using ketamine. So I had been in the medical nursing since 2009, just helping people, just starting from pediatrics to then adults, and then working into the anesthesia and doing pediatric and adult.
So, when you started the ketamine clinic of South Florida, you said it was after you realized the benefits that it had for helping mental health. What are some of those benefits?
Mhm. Yeah. So the benefits having such a rapid antidepressant effect, whereas other antidepressants, it takes like 4 to 6 weeks to even see if there's a benefit, and there's so many other side effects. With ketamine, we would notice it like sometimes, I mean, it's very rare, but even just right after surgery, giving patients ketamine during surgery in the postoperative and post, just seeing them afterwards, having that, oh, I've had a better mood. I haven't had my anxiety attacks that I normally have, or I haven't had my migraines that I normally have. Just seeing the benefits just in like that one dose of ketamine in surgery amongst the other medications that we gave, that was kind of like one of those factors that you would notice. And that's where a lot of people have noticed the benefits, is the rapid antidepressive effects. Ketamine is very different in that it works in a completely different receptor than normal antidepressants. When you're looking at mental health and the normal medications that people prescribe, it's all about a chemical imbalance, that they say, okay, you have a chemical imbalance, let's just give you these medications. And we don't know which one's going to work. So we're going to try one every 4 to 6 weeks, see if it works. If it doesn't, we have to taper you down, try another one for 4 to 6 weeks. If it doesn't work, try another one. It's just like a guessing game of what's going to work. Ketamine works on a completely different receptor, a glutamate receptor. Specifically, it's called NMDA, and not MDA. So when it is blocked, it increases the glutamate. And that's the number one neurotransmitter in the brain and the spinal cord that controls all other reactions in the brain. So it, in effect, will rebalance all the other neurotransmitters that you're trying to fix with the normal antidepressants. But there's also another benefit. There's the benefit of the infusion experience. You have the chemical benefits, in there with the neurotransmitters, but you have the actual psychedelic experience that actually allows any patient in the infusion to go deep into their subconscious mind and get to the root cause of the depression, the anxiety, the PTSD, any memory, any story that they've gotten to and that's been stuck and caused in their brain. That's where they're allowed to really go to in the infusion. When you become exposed to that and are aware of it, that's where the healing becomes possible, with additional psychotherapy, therapy sessions with your therapist or psychiatrist. That's where ketamine is such a powerful tool, for those that are really stuck from traditional, especially.
Wow. So I feel like that's really amazing. A lot of things that you said, because on my live podcast, Hot Topics Live, we often talk about reprogramming your mind and your subconscious mind, and how powerful it is and how it impacts your daily experiences. It's basically the habits based upon the stories that we were told or that we tell ourselves.
Mhm.
And I know that a lot of veterans, whether it was trauma from, a lot of people go into the military escaping a bad situation. Not everybody, but we've all certainly
Mhm.
had traumas in our lives, whether it was as simple as, a best friend moving away when you were 5, to deeper, heavier traumas like seeing someone die, or being a child abuse survivor, or and then going into the military and going into war or whatever traumas that you experience there. A lot of times these emotions are stored in our subconscious mind and can come
Yes.
up in the form of intrusive thoughts and negative self concept and negative stories that we're telling ourselves repeatedly. And this negativity leads you down sort of a dark spiral. And a lot of times, antidepressants alone, they don't do the trick, right? So then we're walking around suffering. The beauty of what ketamine seems to be able to offer is to get right to that and help you break out of that destructive thought pattern or that program that was put into you by someone growing up that's a negative story, that can help you begin to change that story that's being repeated in your psyche. So I think that's really powerful and has the ability to completely change your life. What kind of success stories do you hear or do you get to experience since you run your own clinic?
Oh, yes. Literally every day I go to work and I'm just so honored and just so blessed every day. I just feel joy in seeing the transformations. I mean, we probably have like about an 80 to 85% success rate, especially with PTSD and treatment resistant depression, even anxiety. More difficult to treat is OCD, but it is possible, with the right psychotherapy. But I mean, one of our first patients, he was a veteran that he was suffering. I mean, he came in and his baseline heart rate was in the 120s. He couldn't even get out of bed. And it was just a fog in his eyes. And it was his desperation and hopelessness. He couldn't even be part of his family, and his wife we worked with. So it was, when they both sought our help and we were able to, be there for them, help them through it. And then just by their third or fourth infusion, just having him walk in and seeing the life in his eyes, he was a completely different person. He had started waking up, being able to get out of bed, taking his kids to school, taking him to the park. His heart rate on that fourth appointment was 74. I always
Wow.
remember I was like, oh my God, it's not in the 120s, and you just saw the joy in his eyes. And he's just such a, big advocate for us now as well. He's even on our website, just saying how, even now how amazing he's doing. He's been blessed where he doesn't have to have maintenance infusions because he was really able to work through that trauma and allow the other benefits of ketamine, the decrease in the inflammation. And really, it definitely chemically allows a rebalancing of all the neurotransmitters, resetting, healing, and the main part is the anti-inflammatory effect, especially when those with trauma have a lot of anxiety and PTSD.
Mhm.
They're always constant. You're just always anxiety. Even if you aren't in full blown anxiety, you always have a resting anxiety in your chest. And that ketamine being able to like decrease that inflammation and allow everything just to reset back to baseline is just a miracle for patients. But we have young and old, patients in the 70s down to even in the teens that we treat, everybody. And I love that you said that, Kia, about, just moving away. Like people think of trauma only as, experience of physical, really bad trauma, but no, it could be something as being bullied when you were
Mhm.
younger, or you're being picked on by a parent, or moving away at your senior year of high school, losing everybody, and
Mhm.
having to start over. Those are traumatizing effects that change your brain, and it really affects people. And, ketamine really gets to the root cause because there's only so many things that chemicals can do. You really actually have to work through the root cause. When I talk to my patients and they've said, well, I've been experiencing, anxiety or depression for 20 years, it's not, oh, well, it's a chemical imbalance to treat. It's like my first question is, what happened 20 years ago?
Yeah.
What changed? What was going on? Because those things, whether big or small, start causing chronic stress, cause chronic inflammation in the brain. They change the brain. And in time, just like you said, with our subconscious negative thoughts, we don't even know that they're there. They're running on autopilot. Just like the amount of times you've gotten home from work and you're like, how did I even get here? Your subconscious mind drove you home, right? How many things in your life has your subconscious mind taken you to? And to become aware of it, that's where the power lies. And that's what ketamine does for you. Psychedelics in itself, but obviously we have to, the only thing we have legally available to us right now is ketamine. And it's in a way that, everybody can really go and really get exposed to what is your subconscious mind telling you when you're not aware.
Wow, that's really, really, really powerful because,
Mhm.
if you experience trauma, one major trauma response that I actually experienced was to sort of block out the traumatic experience altogether. So you can be walking around with this trauma and you don't even really remember it, but you still experience the triggers and the impact of that, and I think the beautiful thing about ketamine is that it can break through that, and help you to even heal the traumas that you have sort of blocked out in order to protect yourself,
Mhm.
and really move you through that. And I love that you said in conjunction with therapy, like psychotherapy,
Oh,
because I
so
think
important.
talk therapy plus this type of infusion therapy can really work wonders. And I've seen it work so well for people, which is why I think it's important to share this information with everybody. So, we talked about the benefits that you've seen for ketamine infusion therapy. What exactly is the process? Like, if I was to come into the clinic to call you up and get an appointment, what would I experience as a patient?
Sure. So first, we would do a consultation. We would kind of really ask what you know and understand about ketamine. We would go into our protocols. We do follow study protocols because there's different options now. They are now coming out with at-home ketamine, like oral dosing, intranasal ketamine, and in our office, we stick with intravenous. We do that because we know what we're giving, right? If I give you 100 milligrams of ketamine through the IV, you're going to get the 100 milligrams of ketamine through the IV. Whereas the other dosing, like the oral and the nasal, it depends on the absorbency. So it's kind of like a guessing game on like how much you're getting and what you can get. So you may get too much, you may underdose. So we like to have that better control. So we kind of discuss that protocol as well, and then offer different options. Because to me, like if you can't financially afford to come into the clinic, however way that you can financially afford it, whether it's at home, whether it's through the nasal, the important thing is that you get ketamine. I am a very much advocate. I will refer you to another clinic if it's more affordable or something, because that's what's important to me is like your care. But as far as our process, we educate about ketamine. We'll talk about our protocols, which is 6 infusions over 3 to 4 weeks. Ideally, it's 4 weeks because we do like to spread out the infusions. The higher the dose you get, because that's where you allow for more time of the neuroplasticity, the nerve growth, the nerve healing, more time for psychotherapy with your therapist, and really time to let the ketamine kind of bathe the nerve and do all the healing that it does. So it's 2 infusions per week for the first 2 weeks. And then we ideally would do then the last 2 weeks, 1 infusion per week. Our clinic does provide ketamine integration coaching just because a lot of the times some patients don't have therapists. So we saw that there was this gap really in not only, even if you do have a therapist, like some therapists don't really understand, like like the psychedelic experience, right? Like when you're having a psychedelic, how do you interpret it, how do you correlate with your personal life? So our integration coach really allows that combination for that. But we also recommend it and therapists on the side as well. So we'll go through that, and we really do require a referral from a psychiatrist or their mental health provider, or primary care physician, because we do want that continuity of care. A lot of patients, will necessarily not want to talk to their psychiatrist because they're scared, but it's really a team approach. It's so important to have everybody in your healthcare team aware of it, because yeah, you may be able to taper off some of the medications. You may not need to take all those medications, or you may need to adjust depending on certain medications. We'll say, okay, well, you shouldn't take it the day of, or maybe we can have you slowly come off of that medication, because it does, some medications will block the effects of ketamine. So we can kind of adjust dosing, but it's always, we want it to be a team approach. So we always do require for referral from an outside provider in our office. So after that, once we receive the referral, that's when we can kind of go in a more in-depth medical screening if we need any more clearances, because it does increase heart rate, blood pressure. So we want to make sure that somebody doesn't have any risks of heart attacks or strokes. That would be something that we'd want to make sure of. It doesn't obviously prevent you from having it. We just want to make sure that, hey, if you've had a heart attack, let's make sure everything's stable and under control, and then we can proceed, you
Right.
know, and then we go ahead and schedule infusions once everything is all set up.
So you can have 2 infusions a week, or how does it usually get scheduled?
Yeah, so it'll be 2 infusions a week for the first 2 weeks. So it'll
Mhm.
be Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, Thursday. We always want to have at least a day in between
Mhm.
infusions. So to let your body rest, reset, or if you have to go to work and all that, because you are able to work the next day. Usually the day of, you're not going to want to work afterwards. So sometimes patients will work during the day, like the first half of the day, and come in the evening at 4 p.m. Because you can't work, sign contracts, you can't drive, you don't want to do anything. And think of it as having like a mild sedative, like an anesthetic sedation kind of thing. Even though it's not a full on sedation, it is something that, you cannot drive.
Right.
Definitely not. So we kind of like coordinate the schedule, whether it's if you have to work or not, whether you prefer morning or night, depending on, okay, because you can't eat for 6 hours prior to your infusion either, just because it can increase nausea sometimes. So we would hate for you to get nauseous during the infusion. But we do, provide anti-nausea medications just to prevent that anyways, just in case.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how many weeks would you need? Is it different for everyone?
Usually we try to stick with, I mean, unless it's something, because sometimes we have clients that will be traveling to us. So then we'll kind of like try to squeeze them all in 3 weeks. So it'll be 2 infusions per week. But ideally it would be 4 weeks. Yeah. So
Okay.
the last 2 weeks would be once a week.
Okay.
Mhm.
And because it's intravenous, is the relief that you begin to feel immediate?
Yeah. So I would describe the first infusion. It's very rare, probably about 10-15% of patients will feel immediate relief after the first infusion. Patients with anxiety, they'll feel relief maybe for 24 hours after the first one, because it's such a low dose. Like the first infusion, I mean, patients come in, they're a little bit nervous. It's a different experience. Oh my gosh, I'm getting ketamine through the IV. I'm in a clinic. I'm not unfamiliar. So we really start off at a low dose so that you're meeting the providers, you're seeing the clinic, we're integrating, teaching about journaling, teaching about different things, preparing you for the rest of your infusion series. And it's really just the first experience. So it's very light and comfortable. I describe it as having an awake dream for 45 minutes. So during those infusions, especially the first one, it just feels heavenly. If you are stressed or overwhelmed or even in the depression, when you go into that first infusion, it's just love and it's just peace. It's one of those, when you describe ketamine as an anesthetic, it separates your mind from your body. And that's why it's such an amazing, I mean, it's been used in the military since the Vietnam War. You have a soldier injured on the field, you're injecting IM ketamine right on the
Mhm.
field. So if any of you women have been injured, you've have received ketamine on the battlefield. So it's very safe. It's dissociates your body, so you have this numbing effect. So those that suffer from anxiety and all these emotions, you're just there and you feel nothing, and it's so peaceful. Especially for those that have been struggling for a long time. So people walk out there like, oh, heavenly. Each infusion gets a little bit deeper. So then we start getting into okay, let's start going through and envisioning, kind of like peeling an onion off from, in just discovering things of you throughout each infusion. Um, you're always conscious, but as the deeper you go, you start meeting and talking with your subconscious and kind of like removing your ego and removing your stories. And you're really able to like just join both subconscious to the conscious and communicate and really see what are the battles that you're working through, what are the stories that have been there, because that's where the real power lies, is when you're aware of it. A lot of the times I've had patients that had no idea of a traumatizing experience until they had an infusion. They were like, I didn't even realize that wasn't it. Like, I didn't realize that memory was a traumatizing event for me, and it created the anxiety at that point. It's mind boggling. It's crazy to me that you wouldn't think that, but it just came out. Like, I can think of two patients that had no idea that was the event, and just being aware of it, and then just being able to talk to our integration coach and talk to their therapist. It was like night and day. Their anxiety was gone, and had they not had that experience, they would have never known. And I do want to emphasize, a lot of times, like, people do get scared. Oh, I'm scared. I don't want to have that. I don't want to experience my trauma. I don't want to experience and remember all this stuff. But when you're in there, you are separated emotionally from it. So initially you might think, oh my gosh, here it is. But then when you're watching it, you're literally watching it like an objective event, that you aren't part of it emotionally. You're just there. And some of my patients that have experienced their very traumatic, like assaults or different things, they were there watching it, but they had no fear. They had no trauma. Actually, one of my other patients that experienced her trauma, she described it. She was like, all I felt was love, because even though I was watching my traumatic assault, my family was with me. They were in the infusion experience with her, just around her, hugging her, just making her feel safe. And that was like the transformation for her, just knowing that was not part of her, that this was part of her, you know? And that's what a lot of people experience. And that's what's important, is like, you may experience or see or visualize the trauma, but in a very non-traumatic way. Like, it's just there, and you're able to see it as the event that it was, but not the meaning that we created it about ourselves.
So you're detached from it.
You're detached. Yes.
So that is what sort of the psychedelic part of this experience is, because you sort of visualize the trauma with the help of the ketamine, but you don't re-experience the trauma. You're completely
Exactly.
detached. Wow.
Exactly.
That is, I would say, an incredible way to work through some really either suppressed traumas or traumas that you're aware of, but you need to work through them in order to move to the next phase of your healing, which I think could be amazing for a lot of veterans that may be struggling with having lost someone in
Yeah.
battle or various other traumas that happen during duty. Because that's not, I mean, a lot of people think as veterans, the worst thing that can happen, and it is horrible that you lose a friend while you're serving, but there are a lot of other traumatic events that can happen to you while you're in the military, especially as women. And I think this is just such a beautiful, it sounds like, and it did sound the same when KJ was explaining her experience. It sounds like such a beautiful, peaceful way to work through trauma. And I love that you have someone there to help with the integration coach, because that is important when you have a psychedelic experience. Because when you work through your traumas and you start to face these things, you get a new awareness or a new knowledge that you then need to know how to incorporate into your life. It's like you go through a radical change at a very short amount of time, and you're a new person, but that new person has to go into your old life. So you need someone to work with you in order to help you to integrate that, right? Essentially.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing that you have that on hand for your clients to work with, especially if they, don't have a therapist that they can meet with, right away. So it's
Exactly.
beautiful. So my next question for you is about actually the costs involved with this type of therapy.
Yeah, it's difficult right now because obviously it's not FDA approved for mental health. It's just for anesthesia and pain.
Mhm,
So it can be costly. We are the infusion series, the 6 infusions over 4 weeks is 2,700
mhm,
or $450 per infusion. So it is, definitely costly, but we do provide super bills so that it can hope, the insurance companies can reimburse partial of it, but
mhm,
anything related to ketamine, they're not going to reimburse. So we, create the super bills, it's a doctor's office visit as well as an infusion, in hopes that that's something that will be covered or reimbursable with them. But it hasn't really been very much reimbursement for that, because our medical director is a veteran and we're very blessed with also, you know, benefiting from the services of veterans. We actually have started sponsoring one veteran a month. We started doing that last month, just to be able to, give back to our community that have given us our freedoms, and really know that you guys struggle financially. I mean, we have you guys sacrifice your lives, and then we say thank you, bye, and then good luck, and we hope you do fine in the future, but don't give you any support. So that's something that we're trying to do here in South Florida.
oh, that's
So this
amazing.
next month we're going to give. Actually, on Tuesday we're going to raffle off another infusion for the month.
So if we want to be one of those veterans, how do we get to participate?
Yes, well, that is a good question. You can always reach out to us at Infusion Clinic South Florida on Instagram or our YouTube or Facebook. On Instagram and Facebook, they're very specific, or they block the word ketamine. So instead of Ketamine Clinic South Florida, we're actually Infusion Clinic South Florida on Instagram, but you can always message us. Ideally, obviously, if you're in South Florida, it's a little bit easier because if you're going to travel, as long as you have a provider that's willing to refer you to ketamine infusion therapy, you can reach out to us and then we will include you in the raffle to give away the infusion. And it's not just the one infusion. We provide the series, the 6 infusions over the 4 weeks or 3 weeks, depending on if you have to travel for the infusion. And then we also provide the integration coaching as well.
And that's excellent. What can we expect after the 4 weeks? So we've come in, we've seen you, we've gone through our experiences of having the ketamine for 4 weeks. Then what?
So, depending on the diagnosis, everyone's different, right? If the trauma was pretty recent, during COVID, the loss of loved ones, or you've been doing a lot of work, but you're just slightly resistant, some patients with the ketamine infusions, the integration coaching, and working with your therapist throughout the series may never need to come back for maintenance infusion. Those that have suffered for a long time and continue to have chronic stressor exposures in their current life, they will need to come back every 4 to 6 weeks with maintenance infusions. But we do a lot of teaching because there's a lot of things that you can do in your own life. And it's a lot of coaching that we provide, a lot of journaling that we, kind of push for everyone to go through to kind of delve into, maybe it's a misalignment in your career path. Maybe it's a loss and how to cope and work through your future. It's about dreaming of what's possible and working for tomorrow, because it's not necessarily, oh, let's just heal the past, because you also have to dream about the future. So while you're healing the past, and as we're doing that through the ketamine infusion, we're actually also coaching you on, well, what's next in your life? What do you dream for? What are your hopes for? Because yeah, we can heal the past, but eventually, if we don't look forward, we're going to get stuck to where we are and then start looking into memories again as well. So anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, most people will have to have maintenance infusions for like the chronic depression. A lot of patients won't ever have to come back. It's just that reset, that anti-inflammatory that they just needed to work through.
I love that you said that if we get stuck, we'll start looking to those past memories again. And we need that hope, because it brings me back to KJ having hope. And that's such an important thing, to be able to look towards the future, because now who are you without the trauma? Right? Like
Exactly.
you've got to
Yes.
you've got to have a new self-concept and a new identity without the pain and the suffering. And a lot of people don't realize that. What does it look like to actually be healed or healing, and so far along in your healing that you're a different person? So again, I think with the journaling and everything that you do is so important to help people to move forward once they've worked through this pain, because a lot of times we can't even see past the pain. We don't even know that there could be anything next after that. And so I'm really
Right.
love that you brought that up. And when we come in for maintenance, is it then just one infusion, or is it another like a mini series of them?
When it comes to that, it's very individualistic, but it's just one infusion. Once you get to your ideal dose, we stick to that dose. We don't need to make adjustments. And, if it's every 4 weeks, you'll get that same dose. You'll come in, it's the same dose every time, depending, because a lot of patients end up losing a lot of weight. They get healthy and they're exercising again and they're in their life and they're doing well, and we'll adjust the dose based on like the weight that they've lost, right? Because we don't want to overdose them once the weight comes down. But other than that, it stays the same. It's one infusion, 45 minutes, and then we follow up, 4 to 6 weeks. And everybody is completely different. We have some that are 6 weeks out, every 8 weeks. I have two patients that come every 12 weeks on the dot. So everybody's different as far as like their needs.
Amazing. I just think that this is one of the best therapies out there. We think of it as new, but we discussed it's been around for a long time. And
Mm.
I'm just really glad that the government is sort of starting to catch up. I'm hoping that it will be FDA approved to be one of those therapies that we can get covered by insurance at some point, because it is helping
Yes.
so many people, and it is something that I think a lot of veterans can benefit from. And I'm hearing from people that are benefiting from it, which is why I felt like it was so important to have you come and be a guest and share this knowledge. And it sounds amazing. I mean, to hear it described as a feeling of bliss and peace, I think a lot of us haven't felt that in a while, or you need to
Exactly.
feel that. And it's so important to, if you spend a lot of your time anxious or depressed or in a triggered and that fight or flight state, then this is life changing on so many
It is.
levels.
And
Beautiful.
what's scary is that every time I speak to different veterans groups, none of them know about ketamine. They're like, ketamine, and I'm just so surprised because the veterans, the VA centers, that is something that they should be providing. I mean, it is something that could be so hopeful. My patient that was a veteran, he was on 13 different medications.
I've
He's
been
on
there.
zero now. You know,
Uh-huh.
it's like all these pharmaceuticals, or you could provide ketamine infusion therapy, and they have the facilities to do it. It's something to educate and push for and ask. So everybody I tell them, like, start asking your centers, like, ask about it. It's there, it's possible. It's, push for it
Yeah,
because it'll change their lives.
we got to lobby. We have to have our veterans groups lobbying for these kinds of things for us, really,
Yes.
because I know that KJ did get hers at a VA in Colorado, but it's different everywhere. And I don't even know that they still have that program in existence where she was back when she got it done. So I'm feeling very hopeful, though, that even though we may have to out of pocket the expenses, there are a lot of veterans organizations out there that would be willing to help. And I know that there is a stigma surrounding ketamine. And I was going to ask you about that. Do you see that changing?
Oh, 100%. I mean, just like any other, party drug, like psilocybin, we have the mushrooms, and the MDMA, it's the ecstasy, it's all these, party drugs. Of course, there are always, opportunities for abuse in any controlled substance, but done in a therapeutic manner. I mean, that's a lot of the times in the consult, the first questions I have is like parents and spouses, like, you're giving PCP or special K or horse tranquilizer and all the other stigmas that
Right.
they're asking about. And it's like, yes, yes, those are all possible, but done in a controlled, therapeutic, appropriate dose with the proper integration, it is transformative and it's healing, and it will bring your child, your spouse, your family member back. You know, yes, you always have that option, that possibility, but done appropriately, it is transformative.
So, where can we go to find out more information about ketamine infusion therapy if we wanted to do our own research a bit?
Yes, there's tons. You have to definitely like delve and like be careful on like where you research, because you can have good and bad and all the people who give it the bad name of ketamine. But you can go to our website, which is Ketamine Clinic South Florida. You can also go to askp.org. That is the American Society of Ketamine Providers. So askp.org. There is also a ketamine Facebook group that is actually run by a female veteran. Her name is Kim Jarovieski. I always butcher her last name, Kimberly Jarovieski, but she's part of the ketamine task force to get it covered by insurance because that's the hindering. People can't afford it. It's
Mhm.
expensive, but it's important to have a anesthesia provider in house in those clinics, and that's where the highest expense is having anesthesia in house. You want to be safe and getting into the higher doses that sometimes are necessary for these patients.
Mhm.
And when you don't have anesthesia in house, certain clinics won't go at high doses that it's needed. They'll stay, when there's certain studies saying, oh, ketamine doesn't work for these mental health diagnoses, it's because when I look at the actual studies, I see that they've given the patient such a low dose for all 6 infusions. Of course, it's not going to be very therapeutic. So it's important that you do have an anesthesia provider in house, that you are able to get to a higher dose, to get that dissociation, to get that psychedelic experience and that transformation in that experience. But yeah, so our Ketamine Clinic South Florida, you can go to our YouTube channel as well. We're actually doing a lot of education there as well. And it's simply called Ketamine Clinic South Florida as our YouTube channel. But as far as the Facebook group that has so much knowledge run by Kimberly, when you spell the ketamine infusions for better health, the ketamine has to have a dash in between the KET dash amine.
Funny how it
And
has
there
to
you
be
can
that way.
separate, right? No, all our Facebook, Instagram, all that used to be Ketamine Clinic South Florida. And then we got blacklisted and we had to actually change everything
Mhm.
recently and had to start all over because we couldn't have ketamine in our name. So but it's a great group. They have it separated for different protocols for mental health. So you'll always see either the word MH or pain in the beginning of different posts in
Mhm.
that Facebook group. So because it's different protocols for pain versus mental health. So you'd want to focus on the mental health side of that. So either if you post, you put MH. If you are reading, you want to focus on the MH posts, because some things will not correlate as far as the dosing and regimens and all that.
That makes sense. Can you give me the name of that Facebook group one more time?
hmm It's ketamine infusions for better health. And there's a
Excellent.
little fox on it. Yeah. But remember the ketamine, it's KET dash amine.
Well, as you all know that listen to this podcast regularly, I will put all these links in the description box or show notes, which is where you will read what this episode is about when you're going to listen to it. If you scroll down as far as you can, you will see a lot more information. And that's where you can find these links. And then you just copy and paste it because it doesn't hyperlink it in the show notes. So remember that, copy and paste it, and then you can find all the information that you're looking for. So this has been really, really amazing. I got to tell you, I've learned so much more. I knew a pretty decent amount about ketamine infusion therapy, but I've learned so much more. And I think this will help a lot of people to have a good understanding of it, at least as an option. If not, be inspired to start saving up for it or seeking help to get the funds together for it to give it a try. I know that there are many clinics popping up around the country, so it's worth looking in your area. And if you're not in South Florida, or if you're just really comfortable with Sonia now and you want to go there, then her website will be in the show notes there. But it's worth researching, it's worth taking the time to be open about it and see if it is something that can really, really help you and transform your life because it is transforming lives as we speak. And one of them should be yours. So I want to thank you so much, Sonia. I have one more question for you. I want to be respectful of your time. What advice would you give for my female veteran sisters that might be interested in pursuing this as an alternative therapy?
First thing is talk to your psychiatrist and talk to them and push for them. Sometimes we'll be hesitant because they're not aware of it or they're uneducated. And you could be that voice, you could educate them, or you can find a clinic nearby you, and they would be more than happy to educate them, go to their offices and teach them because that is one of the, I guess, rate limiting steps for us. When we have patients that really need our help and then their psychiatrists aren't on board, they're saying, no, it doesn't work. Let's try another antidepressant or let's put on another medication. And that's now, it's been difficult because of COVID, but before, we couldn't go to their offices, but now we're able to like go to the offices, talk to them, educate them, bring them flyers and see what's possible for them, for their patients, because ketamine is not necessary for anyone, but if you're struggling, you shouldn't be at home hopeless and just taking pill after pill and just struggling to survive. Like you need to live your best life. You are in control of your life. You tell them what you want. You tell them what you need. And if they don't listen, you find someone else. Go to your primary care doctor. If not, when you go to the ketamine infusion clinic that's near you, ask for them. Ask, hey, who else can I go to and find? Because if they're not open to it and they're not open to learning and seeing the new possibilities, because this is hope for so many people, you don't need to struggle and you need to stand up and don't let them say no. If it's possible, you deserve it.
Absolutely. And we are fighters. Many of us have had to fight the government for our VA benefits to begin with, fight for care. We're used to that. So you are your own best advocate. We already know. And this is worth fighting for to get the care that you need. I don't take any medications anymore because of the alternative therapies that I researched and was open enough to try. And I would absolutely, without a doubt, and I think I may just go and try a ketamine infusion for some of the residual things that I'm still working through because healing is a journey, it's a process. But I got to tell you, I was like that patient who was on 13 different medications for 10 years. I
Wow.
felt so sick and so polluted. I remember I was actually in South Florida and I told my doctor at the VA in Miami that I felt so sick as she was prescribing me yet another medication. And I said, I think I'm going to die. I think I'm going to die.
Wow.
I feel so polluted. I don't think I can take anything else. And she said to me, well, it's not like I get a bonus for prescribing medications. I don't get any sort of kickback. And I thought, what the hell does that have to do with what I just said?
Yeah.
Like, I'm dying here. I can't take anything else. And it was at that moment, I felt so low and so alone and so just broken that I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go and I'm going to get on Google because there was a time that didn't exist and you'd have to be in the library. Now I have all this information at my fingertips. I'm going to go on Google. I'm going to find other ways. There must be something else. That's what I thought. And I found other more holistic alternatives that I tried that worked for me, that helped me to, over a period of years, get off of every single medication. And I lost weight and I got my life back. And do I still experience anxiety sometimes? Yes. Do I still get triggered sometimes? Yes. But very few and far between. I'm able to do this podcast. There was a time where that would have been out of the question. And even though, I do them as often as I can and I do other things, I have the other podcast and I do the coaching with London Real Academy, I wouldn't have been able to do any of those. Those are all like little part-time jobs that I have. But I wouldn't have been able to do any of those. I could barely take care of my kids. I was bedridden. I was in bed
Wow.
24 hours a day, almost, at least 20 hours a day, realistically, every day for almost 10 years. And now I have a life. I have hope. And so this is why I do this podcast. This is why I do these episodes about alternative therapies because I believe in it, because I'm an example of the fact that it can work and it can give you the life you never thought that you would ever have again. And it can save a life, because when there's no hope, that's when it's so dark that you just don't want to go on. And I've been there too. So I want to thank you so much for coming today and sharing all this information. You may have saved a life here today, and that's important work. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's been an honor. If I can just help one of you guys, just anything, if you ever have any questions, you call me, you message us on Instagram and we'll reach out.
Absolutely. And again, I will put all of Sonia's information in the description box so you know how to reach out to her, how to follow them on social media and support her clinic, and how to get more information to share with your friends and your loved ones, because everyone needs to know that this is out here and it's available to you. So we do what we have to do to survive and to live our best life. You're worth it. You deserve it. And all it takes is being informed. So, again, Sonia, thank you so much for being a guest today.
Oh, thank you.
And
Thank you,
with
everyone.
and with that, we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank you so much for coming on this journey with me, for listening to these episodes, for giving me reviews on Apple Podcasts, and with sharing the episodes with other female veterans and women who want to know what we experience when we serve, and just for being so supportive for these years that I've been doing this podcast. I'm going to keep the episodes coming. Thank you so much for everyone who's been emailing me and telling me what they mean to you, because that is what keeps me going when I'm going through tough moments in my life too. And I love you guys. I'll talk to you next time.